Cloud Governance provides several options for lifecycle management for your SharePoint Online site collections and Microsoft Office groups and teams. The two settings that you can configure directly within a policy are known as the lease and the inactivity threshold. While they may look and sound similar, they're both triggered by different things. To configure both, we log into Cloud Governance and go to our Settings page. On the Settings page, in the Request Management category, we go to Policy, and in this case, I'm going to create a brand new policy. In this example, let's say that I'm going to set up a new policy for Teams provisioning. First, I fill in some basic information, like a name and optional description, and then we have to pick a category and select our tenant. Then we click Next. If we scroll down in the second page settings, here we can see the inactivity threshold, and then below that, the lease management options. As a default, neither are enabled. If I select Enable Group Team Inactivity Threshold, it provides me with some options to configure. The main idea with the inactivity threshold is that after a certain amount of time where no one is going in and using the group or the team, that will trigger a lifecycle response. Let's say for our argument here that we do 1 year. We then have to assign an approval process. Approval processes are typically built towards purpose, different ones for different types of service requests. In this case, I've already built one for my groups and teams lease and inactivity approval. Here it outlines for us exactly how the approval process is going to work, and approval processes, if you're not familiar, are configured over on the settings page. There is a separate how-to video on building approval processes. Below the settings for the approval process, we can see Enable Group Team Inactivity Threshold Warning. That will allow you to configure what's called a reminder profile, and again, I already have one in place. The reminders will send email to the particular person who's in charge of approving the inactivity threshold task. The logic of adding the reminder is it will trigger before the inactivity threshold is actually reached. Enable an additional lifecycle action gives you the ability to enable automatic deletion or automatic archiving of the team. This will occur, again, if the inactivity is not dealt with. Essentially, if a team remains abandoned, it will do one of these things if I select it. As an example, enable automatic deletion of the group. Automatically delete after the activity threshold has not been completed for, let's say, 2 weeks. And again, we can enable a reminder to occur before that happens. So effectively, by stacking all of these options, the approver, which in this case is the owner, is going to receive a reminder that their inactivity threshold is approaching. That means no one is using the team and it's about to run up against that threshold. And a task to go and review that will be triggered. Then, if they still don't do anything, 2 weeks later, it's going to delete the site, but not before sending reminders that the site will be deleted if it continues to be inactive. Those are your inactivity threshold options. It's all about no one using that thing. If I was creating a brand new SharePoint Online site collection policy, this would be all about no one using that site collection. Now below the inactivity threshold, we have the lease options. The lease options are going to look very similar to the inactivity threshold, but the trigger is different. Inactivity threshold is triggered a certain number of days after the last person accesses that particular team. As we said, it reflects no one using it. The lease has no such limitation. The lease will begin to tick away from the first day after the team is provisioned. So if I was to come in here, for instance, and say 6 months, a 6-month lease means 6 months from the day the team is created, its lease will expire. This is tremendous functionality for provisioning temporary collaboration objects. And again, you can do the same thing with your SharePoint Online site collections. It needs an approval process. We can enable expiration warnings. And just like with the inactivity threshold, we can enable automatic deletion or automatic archiving if the lease is not dealt with. Now, the way that the team owner could renew the lease is they could submit a lease renewal request. That is something that we can provide to the users. So when they receive a reminder, hey, your lease is about to expire, they could fill out a request to renew the lease for that particular team or SharePoint Online Site Collection. How long the lease will renew for, to allow them to do that, if we scroll back up in the policy, we have Group Team Lifecycle Management requests, and here we have Enable Extension of the Group Team Lease. If they do fill out that request and it gets approved, how long do we want it to be renewed for? Well, maybe we'll renew the lease for the same duration as the original. And what approval process do we want to have in place? This will probably be different from the one that you used below, because essentially that would route to the same person. They would be approving their own request. If that aligns with your governance policies, then that's fine. Maybe you're not concerned about who renews their leases, you just want to see that it's happening, and so we do that through cloud governance because everything remains visible and reportable. If not, if someone else, like for instance someone in IT or a member of the governance team should be approving it, well then you want to select a different approval process that will route to another person. If all my settings here look good, and I've made sure to fill in all of the other settings that are part of this particular policy, up at the top left we can click Save and Activate. That new policy is now ready to be used with a provisioning service request and made available to my business users. When they request and get approved, any teams that will be provisioned through cloud governance will automatically have those inactivity threshold and lease features already in place. Thanks for watching this short video on comparing the differences between inactivity threshold and lease period in cloud governance policies.